Yasuranandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasuranandana Brajajana Ranjana Chamunachira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Govardhana Baba Girdhari Govardhana Baba Girdhari Yasuranandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasuranandana Brajajana Ranjana Chamunachira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Govardhana Baba Girdhari Suranandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasuranandana Brajajana Ranjana Chamunachira Vanachari Chamunachira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Govardhana Baba Girdhari Yasuranandana Brajajana Yasuranandana Brajajana Ranjana Chamunachira Vanachari Chamunachira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Govardhana Baba Girdhari Suranandana Brajajana Ranjana Shasvanandana Vajajaranjana Chaunasira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Sodhara Sarashi Srimad Bhagavatam Sesi Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shekho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dhamma Ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Gangamaya Ki Jai. Shri Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. Shri Krishna Balaram Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Radha Govardhana Dare Ki Jai. Shri Govardhana Dhamma Ki Jai, Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, all glories to the assembled devotees, 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 all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Sutta Uvacha Ida Parikshit Kuru Jangale Yavasad Kalim Pravishtam Nija Chakravartite Ishamya Vartam Manati Priyam Tata Sarasanam Samyuga Shundirdaride Arade Sutta Uvacha Yada Parikshit Kuru Jangale Vasat Kalim Ravishtam Nija Chakravartite Shamyavartam antipriyam tataha Sharasanam yuga sundir adadide. Anyone else? Ladies, anyone? Okay. So, responsively, Sutaha, Uvacha, Yada, when, Parikshit, Maharaj Parikshit, Kuru Jangale, in the capital of Kuru's empire, Avasat was residing, Kalim, the symptoms of the age of Kali, Pravishtam, entered, Vartam, news, Anatipriyam, not very palatable, Tataha, thereafter, Sharasanam, arrows and bow, Samyuga, having gotten a chance for, Shamdihi, martial activities, Adade, took up. Translation, Sutta Goswami said, when Maharaj Parikshit was residing in the capital of the Kuru Empire, the symptoms of the age of Kali began to infiltrate within the jurisdiction of his state. When he learned about this, he did not think the matter very palatable. This did, however, give him a chance to fight. He took up his bow and arrow and prepared himself for military activities responsibly. Sutta Goswami said, while Maharaj Parikshit was residing in the capital of the Kuru Empire, the symptoms of the age of Kali began to infiltrate within the jurisdiction of his state. When he learned about this, he did not think the matter very palatable. This did, however, give him a chance to fight. He took up his bow and arrows and prepared himself for military activities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The state administration of Maharaj Parikshit was so perfect that he was sitting in his capital peacefully. But he got the news that the symptoms of the age of Kali had already infiltrated into the jurisdiction of his state, and he did not like this news. What are the symptoms of the age of Kali? They are 1. Illicit connection with women, 2. Indulgence in meat eating, 3. Intoxication, and 4. Taking pleasure in gambling. The age of Kali literally means the age of coral, and the above-mentioned 4 symptoms in human society are the root causes for all kinds of quarrel. Maharaj Parikshit heard that some of the people of the state had already taken to these symptoms, and he wanted to take immediate steps against such causes of unrest. This means that at least up to the time of Maharaj Parikshit, such symptoms of public life were practically unknown. And as they were slightly detected, he wanted to root them out. The news was not palatable for him. But in a way it was, because Maharaj Parikshit got a chance to fight. There was no need to fight with small states because everyone was peacefully under his subordination. But the Kali Yuga miscreants gave his fighting spirit a chance for exhibition. A perfect Kshatriya king is always jubilant as soon as he gets a chance to fight, just as a sportsman is eager when there is a chance for a sporting match. It is no argument that in this age of Kali, such symptoms are predestined. If so, then why was there preparation for fighting out such symptoms? Such arguments are offered by lazy and unfortunate men. In the rainy season, rain is predestined, and yet people take precautions to protect themselves. Similarly, in the age of Kali, the symptoms, as above mentioned, are sure to infiltrate into social life, but it is the duty of the state to save the citizens from the association of the agents of the age of Kali. Maharaj Parikshit wanted to punish the miscreants indulging in the symptoms of Kali, and thus save the innocent citizens who are pure in habit, of culture, of religion. It is the duty of the king to give such protection, and Maharaj Parikshit was perfectly right when he prepared himself to fight. Verse again, Sutta Goswami said, while Maharaj Parikshit was residing in the capital of the Kuru Empire, the symptoms of the age of Kali began to infiltrate within the jurisdiction of his state. When he learned about this, he did not think the matter very palatable. This did, however, give him a chance to fight. He took up his bow and arrows and prepared himself for military activities. Mukam karoti bachalam pangam langayate girim yat karipa taraham bande Shri Guru Diratanane. It's interesting that Prabhupada said that a Kshatriya is always jubilant when he gets an opportunity. He used the term always jubilant when he got an opportunity to fight. And then he went on to say that it was just like a sportsman really likes the opportunity to engage. Like any sport, like the football, American football. I'm used to that. I was kind of a fan of American football. I didn't like to play it so much because I was always thinking someone's going to put their knee or foot in my face, but I like to watch it on television. They had 2 types of football that were televised. One was called college or university football, in which the 12 players both offended and defended. And then there was a higher level called professional football, where they had offensive and defensive teams. So there were 12 people who did the offense, the passing and the running, and as soon as that was done, their they called them downs, were over, or they didn't gain enough yardage, then the defensive backs came onto the field. So during the time of football, well, it still exists, there have been scouts, people that look at younger football players and see if they're fit to play for universities or professionals. And one of the aspects is kind of like Kshatriyas. They call it defense, or they used to call it running interference. They would players that were offensive players would block out the opposite team to give the running people more freedom to run with the ball or to pass the ball. So they were sort of running interference. They had a very strong. What the scouts were looking for was people with very innate protective mentalities. It's kind of like the Kshatriyas of yore. They wanted to protect. They're very small, maybe 10 or 15% of the population, but they were so good at protecting that the citizens always felt calm and peaceful. They were protecting against invaders. They were protecting against Kali miscreants, as Prabhupada calls them. But they had a very strong kind of protective atmosphere, and that's kind of a good quality. It's the quality of a lot of administrators too. It's kind of like the head of a family or the father of a family wants to protect the wife and the children. That's part of his duty is the protection of the family, so that they feel fairly peaceful and calm. The idea is that they have a protective nature. And these very expert football players who would block the interference away from the runner or the passer of the football, that was a quality that people looked for, that they had this protective nature. They would undergo all sorts of tribulation, and it's a very, very brutal and painful sport as far as sports go. But these fullbacks or halfbacks or whatever they were, linemen, were very expert at blocking the interference. There's a Greek story of a guy named Damocles. I think he's Greek, and he was in a courtier in the when I think it was Dionysius was the king. Dionysius was the king of Syracuse, and he was kind of an envious guy. This is not a true story. I think it's kind of a sort of a fabricated fable. But anyway, he was kind of envious, and he thought, why is this guy, this king, getting all the best food, and he has lots of wives and wonderful dancing girls and good entertainment is always at his behest. And I just think it's not fair. It's not right. So somehow or other, Dionysus was aware of this guy, and he arranged for him to be the king for a day, and to sit on the throne. And he was sitting on the throne having very nice food and observing the wonderful dancing and all these things. And then he noticed there was a big sword dangling above his head, a big sword, a real heavy sword, that if it fell, it would have split his head open. It was not just an ordinary sword. It was something pretty heavy, and it was just hanging by a little thin hair. And the moral to the story is that Dionysius said, this is what it's like being the king. People are always trying to kill you. They're trying to oppose you. There's the constant threats to your life, and that's what it's like. I mean, maybe I'm getting nice food and nice entertainment and a lot of adulation and a lot of kingly pleasures, but it's no picnic. And so this guy kind of came to his senses that he had this royal position, but it was not such an easy thing. There was a lot of danger involved, a lot of danger. I think that even things as simple and as fulfilling as giving a Srimad Bhagavatam class are also kind of dangerous, especially now that many people are observing or listening at least. I heard that someone gave a class in Russia where upwards to 3,000 people were able to hear the class. in Russian. Of course, they were mostly Russians. But then I also heard that there was someone in New Zealand who gave a class, and 40,000 people were able to listen. So it's kind of intimidating, really. When I was younger, I think it was in 1981, there was a Supreme Court case, and I had to I didn't have to be, but I was asked to represent ISKCON, who was the defendant in the case, and we lost that case. And because I was on the other side of, not the other side of the nation, but about 1,500 miles away, I couldn't go to Detroit or wherever, Washington, or wherever this Supreme Court was. Actually, it's closer to 3,000 miles, or how many kilometers is that? About 5,500 kilometers, something like that. And so I had to go to a different city in a very dimly lit room, and I was the only person in that room. It was about maybe a fourth of the size, or a third of the size of this temple. And I was staring into a glass that had a camera. So while I was speaking, literally millions, maybe 20 or 30 million people were watching me. And I couldn't see them, but they could see me. So it was very intimidating. Just look at this piece of glass, a dark kind of frosted glass with a lens behind it. And I could hear the questioner. It was kind of a hostile interviewer. I could hear him, but I couldn't see him. All I did is I heard this voice, and I was looking into this camera, and 20 million people were watching me. And this guy was so hostile that he interrupted my talk several times. But from what I learned, I just kept on talking, even though he was interrupting. And after about 2 or 3 interruptions, he just stopped. And somehow or other, I got my message through, even though it was kind of damage control. And then in 1988, after a book was written about the Hare Krishna, it's kind of a negative book, a kind of a true crime thriller. This is in 1988 when there was a lot of abuse going on in the movement, and a lot of unfortunate things. I was summoned to a TV studio, and these were the days when the people had a lot of money. So they paid for my flight from San Diego to New York, which is about 2,500 miles. They paid for that, and they paid for my staying in a penthouse suite in a hotel, which was probably about $900 a night. In those days, that was a lot of money. It's probably about $3,000 or $4,000 now. But anyway, I knew that I had about 10 minutes to talk to millions of people, maybe 10 or 20 million people. So I practiced what I was going to say in front of a mirror. And I memorized my speech. I practiced and practiced for about an hour what I was going to say. And I not only had to memorize all the words, but I had to make it look spontaneous and natural. So therefore, there was a big mirror, fortunately, there in the penthouse suite. So I practiced and practiced, and I had a splitting headache that night. And I didn't get to bed till about 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was an early morning TV program called Good Morning America. It started about 7 o'clock. So without much sleep, I went there, and they had all kinds of makeup people, and this is just a little room with about 4 or 5 people in it, including the person who wrote the book that was in question. And I kind of knew he was going to be there, and they put all kinds of powder and makeup on my head and my face, and they didn't, it really had a lot of money. Anyway, I said what I was going to say, and somehow or other it wasn't a total loss. But it's very intimidating, because now, we're sitting in a little room with maybe 10 or 12 people in it, but maybe 30 or 40 or 50,000 people are hearing this whole class. So I'm going to keep it a little bit elementary for people that don't know anything about Krishna consciousness, what it's all about. So it's going to be a little bit elementary. The first element that we were taught was that we're not the body, that there's a tiny little spark of life driving the human body. And that's the real essence of life. We learned that it was kind of like a car or an airplane. The car or the airplane sit dormant in a garage or in a hangar or whatever, and there's no motion. But as soon as a human being, namely a pilot or a driver, is available, it comes to life. And it can go very fast and way up in the air. It's like the soul driving the body. And the soul is so small that it cannot be seen. It's kind of like this viral disease that's going around, that's bringing civilization and to its knees, in effect. Probably there's going to be a good deal less airplane and automobile travel after things go somewhat back to normal. But the idea is that the soul is a very tiny thing. Its actual magnitude is mentioned in one of the Puranas, Keshava, that it's the 10,000th part of the tip of a hair. And what is a tip of a hair? I mean, we're taught to think that everything has to be measurable and quantifiable, so a tip is kind of like a meaningful thing. If we look at a hair under a microscope, for example, instead of being pointed, it looks flat. So it doesn't really mean anything. And it's been taught that the soul is immeasurable, or it's infinitesimal. And even that can be, there's a mathematical symbol for in infinity, so there's probably one for the infinitesimal. I don't exactly know what it is, but it's something that's so small that it can't be measured. It can't be quantified, and it can't be seen with the naked eye, or even under a powerful microscope. So something, and like money is kind of like that too. Money is kind of like, well, it's paper for one thing, and if you bring that paper, you can't get an equal amount of precious metal like gold for thousands of dollars of paper money. It's so small, and it's even more small because nowadays it's a computer impulse, or it's like an electronic impulse on a hard drive. You can't even see it, and yet billions and billions of dollars are exchanged every minute, every hour of every day through this invisible force, this little impulse called a dollar, or whatever it's called, or a euro. So the virus is kind of like that. It's something that's so small and so insignificant that it's not seeable, not visible, even through microscopes. I mean, maybe they can see it through powerful microscopes, or supposedly they know what it is. They have illustrations of what it can look like. It's interesting that the word comes from, I think, corona means circles. Or when I was younger, I learned that there was such a thing as a corona eclipse, when the moon comes in front of the sun, completely obliterating it, and the little petals or rays that come out are called the corona. So somehow or other, it got to be named corona. Anyway, these things are going on. But anyway, my point is that something so small, pun intended, my point, something so small is very powerful. Just like the soul, it can drive an elephant, it can drive an airplane, and the medical term of a virus is something that's so small, and yet it's so powerful it can bring about world economic collapse. I mean, that's how powerful something that's so small and so invisible is. And it's not the first time that small and unlikely things have happened. There was a great the Kurukshetra war was generated because the Kauravas said that they wouldn't give the Pandavas enough land that would hold the point of a needle. So over that very tiny little thing, thousands of people were killed in the Kurukshetra war. So size is not important. I mean, it's the power of a thing that's important, and the power of the soul is there. I think we were also taught that the reason why the American people lost the Vietnam War was because they hadn't trained people to feel jubilant in fighting. Kshatriyas were always like sportsmen, feeling very jubilant and very happy, and like sportsmen to have the opportunity, like Maharaj Pariksit, to don their bows and arrows or their football costumes with lots of padding, as the American footballers. And people were not trained that way. So there was a lot of people who they called them draft dodgers. I was one of them. who didn't have that spirit of fighting, and therefore they lost the war against a very small country with some very militant people who didn't like their country being invaded by these footballers, so to speak, or people who weren't trained in fighting, and they intimidated them. When I was younger, I read that sometimes they put holes in the ground to intimidate the so-called American soldiers, and they put snakes in these pits and sharpened wooden stakes. So after a few times when American soldiers fell into these holes and got bitten by snakes and pierced by these sharpened sticks, they just thought, "Oh, this is crazy. I'm out of here. I'm not part of this war. It's too brutal." But a true Kshatriya really likes the fight. He makes his own holes and he makes his own stakes and he dons his own bows and arrows, and he fights. He enjoys it. To the point where I think I heard that the Kshatriyas could have a friendship with each other at night. They could eat together, they could sleep together, they could talk together, and then at daytime they would fight to the death. That was the life of a true soldier or a true fighter. Today we're fighting mostly, and the fighting is done mostly in the courtrooms and over the internet, and it's competitors in the corporate world. They're fighting with each other. And as Prabhupada has mentioned in some of his purports in the first canto, that this fighting spirit is there's no spiritual basis to it. They're untrained, and therefore there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension, and a lot of unnecessary trouble, and all kinds of diseases. I think in one walk with one devotee, he said that all disease, or 90% of disease, is mental. This means that all of you who are listening to me, who are taking pills and various types of medicines and going to various doctors, are just causing your own anxiety-fed diseases. I think I read in a British tabloid somewhere. I mean, I don't like British tabloids, but it was written that something like 80% of all operations performed in England were unnecessary. They were just performed to give money to the surgeons, to the medical profession. So it's not only the British Medical Association, but the American Medical Association. They're very, very protective of making money of their tablets and their pharmaceutical industry. And of course, this is I'm kind of segueing into a current events type of class, but all these things are because people don't have a knowledge of the truth about God. And because we live in a godless civilization, people are not trained properly, and therefore there's a constant quarrel and anxiety. As Prabhupada says in the purport here, literally Kali means quarrel. And in other purports he mentions that over a very slight, very insignificant thing, people have major quarrels and major wars. That's the age of Kali, the age of quarrel. So I'll stop here, and if there's any points or questions I can comment on, I'll be happy to. I know that most of the listeners can't ask any questions, but I'm asking people that I can hear. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead. So anything anyone wants to say? Then I can end the class. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.